People often ask me when my life truly split in two, and I always tell them it was the day Marcus Hale smiled at me across the glass conference table and said, "Trust me, Emma, I'll take your idea exactly as it is." I remember the way the morning light hit the chrome walls of the innovation wing, the buzz of the office, the faint scent of burnt coffee, and the knot in my stomach I mistook for excitement instead of warning. Back then, I still believed people with charming smiles meant what they said. I still believed hard work always won. I still believed sharing my biggest project with Marcus was the smart move. I didn't know that he was studying me the way a thief studies an unlocked door. I didn't know he had already decided my future would be the sacrifice he needed for his ambitions. I handed him everything: months of research, sketches, prototypes, financial projections. He chuckled and said, "Relax, Emma, you'll get your credit." That sentence would haunt me for months. 3 days later, I watched him walk onto the stage during our division meeting, holding my prototype like it was his newborn child. As people clapped, he said the words that shattered me. "This concept has been my vision for over a year, and I'm proud to finally share it with you." Laughter, applause, admiration, none of it was for me. I felt my throat tighten, my hands shake under the table. My friend Sophia whispered, "Emma, that's your project." All I could whisper back was, "Not anymore." That afternoon, I circled a date on my calendar with trembling hands. It would become the word that carried me through every dark moment: Chermisday.
The days that followed were a slow-motion avalanche. Marcus didn't just steal my idea, he rebuilt his entire persona around it. People congratulated him in the hallway, slapped him on the back, told him how brilliant he was. Every time I walked past him, he gave me a smug, knowing smirk, as if daring me to challenge him. He wasn't just taking credit, he was rewriting history. When I finally worked up the courage to confront him in the break room, I said quietly, "You know that design came from me." He didn't even pretend to feel guilty. He took a leisurely sip of his coffee, leaned against the counter, and said, "Emma, ideas belong to the people strong enough to claim them. You hesitated. I didn't." I felt the blood drain from my face. "You promised," I began, but he cut me off. "You really thought you were ready for a promotion? You barely speak in meetings. This industry eats soft people alive." It was the cruelty in his tone that broke me more than the words. Later that week, HR summoned me about a documentation inconsistency Marcus reported, a forged accusation claiming I had mishandled sensitive client data. It wasn't true, but the stigma stuck like tar. My project access was revoked, my bonus was frozen, people I considered friends started avoiding me. Marcus walked by my desk one morning, leaned close enough that only I could hear, and whispered, "Careful, Emma, wouldn't want you to embarrass yourself more." That night, I cried in my car for an hour before driving home. My brother Aaron found me sitting on the floor of my room, shaking, repeating, "It wasn't me, I didn't do anything wrong." That was the night I whispered the date again, Chermisday. I didn't know how, but I promised myself he would remember it. I didn't become a strategist overnight. Pain sharpened me in ways success never could. For the first few weeks, I walked around like a ghost, silent, embarrassed, convinced my career was collapsing. But grief eventually hardens into something colder, something steadier. One night, while staring at Marcus's announcement email about his upcoming promotion ceremony, the thought crept into my mind like a whisper. What if I'm not meant to break? What if I'm meant to rebuild differently? That night, I opened my laptop, hands trembling but heart steadying, and began gathering every digital breadcrumb I could find. Old drafts, metadata, timestamps. Conversations where Marcus praised my idea before stealing it, screenshots of his contradictions. I didn't know exactly what I was building, but I knew it was bigger than my pain. I began meeting Sophia late at night at a 24-hour coffee shop. She listened to everything, every detail, every humiliation, and said, "Emma, if you can prove this, you can burn his entire lie down legally." Hearing that lit a spark inside me. I started wearing a mask of quiet compliance at work, nodding politely whenever Marcus bragged about his innovation, all while documenting every move. The more he gloated, the more determined I became. One afternoon, I overheard him telling another manager, "Emma was never cut out for leadership. She's background material." Something inside me clicked. Not rage, not grief, but clarity. I whispered to myself, 3 days until Chermisday someday. I didn't yet know what form my revenge would take, but the seed was planted. I would not strike in anger. I would strike in precision. Marcus believed I was weak because I didn't scream. He had no idea silence was where I rebuilt my power.
The turning point came 6 months later, long after everyone assumed I had accepted my place beneath Marcus. I had spent evenings studying forensic accounting modules, learning how to read financial trails the way some people read novels. I practiced analyzing metadata, reconstructing deleted edits, and storing evidence in encrypted vaults. The more knowledgeable I became, the less afraid I felt. Meanwhile, Marcus soared through the company, using my work as his personal stepping stone. He strutted through the office with a confidence that made my stomach twist, laughing loudly, shaking hands with executives, and throwing careless jabs my way. "Still here, Emma?" he'd say with faux concern. "Don't worry, not everyone can be exceptional." Every insult became fuel. One night, while reviewing archived emails, I found a thread where Marcus slipped. A careless admission. He had forwarded my original prototype to a vendor 3 weeks before his big reveal. The timestamps were perfect. Undeniable proof he had the material before claiming authorship. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. This was the first crack in his armor. I sent it to Sophia, who replied instantly, "Emma, this is huge. Start digging around that vendor." When I requested a meeting with Priya, one of the coworkers who used to work closely with Marcus, she arrived pale and tense. She confessed quietly, "I know what he did to you. He asked me to delete some files before his presentation. I still have the originals." My breath caught. "Priya, why tell me now?" She looked away. "Because someone like him shouldn't be in power." That night, I didn't whisper the word Chermisday. I spoke it clearly, as if claiming my future. It no longer felt like revenge. It felt like justice sharpening itself. The final piece of the foundation fell into place the evening Marcus humiliated me publicly for the last time. It was during a company networking event. Dim lights, soft jazz, executives floating from conversation to conversation. I had come only because Helena Brooks, our CEO, insisted the whole department attend. I stood near the back, quietly sipping sparkling water, when Marcus approached the group beside me. With his usual showman confidence, he gestured toward me and said loudly, "Emma's here? I thought she'd have transferred by now. Poor thing still thinks hard work matters." A few people laughed. Others looked away uncomfortably. My cheeks burned, but this time the humiliation didn't crush me, it crystallized my purpose. He continued, "Some people create greatness, others watch it happen." Then he smirked at me, waiting for a reaction. Instead, I simply said, "Congratulations on your upcoming promotion, Marcus." He raised his glass. "Well deserved, don't you think?" I met his eyes and replied softly, "Time will tell." He didn't understand the weight of my words, but I did, because by then I had discovered something far worse than idea theft. Marcus had been inflating vendor invoices and pocketing the difference under a shell company registered in his cousin's name, and thanks to the forensic skills I had spent months learning, I had the proof. When I showed the findings to Sophia, she whispered, "Emma, this could end his entire career."
That night, I circled the date of his promotion ceremony again, tracing the red ink slowly, deliberately. Chermisday, not the day I would ruin him, the day he would ruin himself, with his own lies, his own greed, his own carelessness, while I simply held up the mirror. And for the first time in months, I felt calm.
Closer, the atmosphere in the office thickened with anticipation. Marcus walked around as if he already owned the building, shaking hands and planning celebration dinners with board members. Meanwhile, I worked quietly, my actions precise and almost invisible. Each night after the office emptied, I reviewed new layers of evidence. Every invoice discrepancy, every forged approval, every misdirected payment. Each detail fed into a growing mosaic of truth. I didn't move recklessly. I didn't rush. Revenge built on impatience collapses, but revenge built on patience becomes inevitable. 3 weeks before Chermisday, I received an unexpected email from a former vendor. "Are you still the project lead? We wanted to thank you for the designs Marcus submitted years ago." My stomach twisted. Years ago. He had been stealing my work long before the big betrayal. I forwarded it to Sophia with disbelief. She called immediately. "Emma, this shows pattern and intent. This isn't just unethical, this is prosecutable." For a moment, doubt flickered inside me. Could I really bring down someone so protected, so admired, so deeply entrenched in the company's hierarchy? I sat in my dim apartment, eyes burning, and whispered, "Is revenge worth it?" But then I remembered his voice saying, "Your background material," and the humiliation that had followed, the sleepless nights, the damaged credibility, the silent tears. And I realized this wasn't revenge, it was restoration. I had spent 18 months documenting everything, every lie, every stolen idea, every signature he forged. I wasn't destroying Marcus, I was unveiling him. But what they didn't know was that I had already set Chermisday in motion. The clock was ticking, and every second brought me closer to the moment Marcus's empire would collapse under the weight of his own arrogance.
The closer we got to Chermisday, the more dangerous everything became. One afternoon, while I was transferring encrypted documents to a secure drive, Marcus unexpectedly stepped into my office. My pulse spiked. He leaned against the doorframe, smiling in that smooth, rehearsed way he always did when he suspected something. "Working late again?" he asked, trying to prove something. I forced a casual shrug. "Just catching up." He narrowed his eyes, scanning my desk. The USB drive sat half hidden beneath a notebook, and for a terrifying moment I thought he'd spotted it. Instead, he chuckled. "You really need to relax, Emma. Ambition looks desperate on you." I said nothing. Silence unsettled him more than confrontation. After he left, I waited 10 full minutes before letting out the breath I'd been holding. That evening, Aaron visited me with takeout. He watched me work, worry clouding his expression. You're scaring me. You barely sleep. You barely eat. What are you getting yourself into?" I paused, feeling the weight of secrecy pulling at me. "I'm fixing something," I said softly. "Something that was taken from me." He shook his head. "Just don't lose yourself in the process." I wanted to tell him everything, but I couldn't risk exposure. Not now, not when the evidence was nearly complete. The next day, Priya slipped me a folder containing handwritten notes Marcus had once asked her to destroy. She whispered, "If he finds out I helped you." I squeezed her hand. "He won't." Every ally felt like a miracle. Every risk felt like a heartbeat louder than the last. But none of them knew that Chermisday was now only days away, and I could feel the storm building inside me, cold and focused. 1 week before Chermisday, I met Sophia and Riley Chen, the forensic accountant who had quietly taken an interest in my case, at a tiny corner cafe far from the office. The air smelled like cinnamon and burnt espresso, and outside rain tapped gently against the windows. Riley laid out the full financial trace on the table, page by page. This, he said, tapping a highlighted section, links Marcus directly to the overbilled vendor payments. The shell company isn't even subtly disguised, it's arrogance. Sophia added, and with Priya's testimony plus your timestamps, the board can't ignore this. I felt a trembling begin in my hands, not fear, but stunned realization. This could end everything for him. Riley nodded. Companies don't tolerate financial misconduct. He'll lose the promotion minimum, maybe even his job. I stared at the documents, absorbing each line. Months of silent work were crystallizing. Emma, Sophia asked softly, are you ready for what comes after this? I didn't answer immediately. My mind wandered to the countless nights I had cried thinking about the future Marcus had stolen from me. The self-doubt, the anxiety, the feeling of being small in a room full of powerful people. Finally, I said, yes, I'm ready. As we packed up, I noticed an email notification flash on my phone from Marcus. Subject line, big day is coming. My heart thudded once, hard. I opened it. Hope to see you at the ceremony, Emma. Maybe you'll learn how real leaders operate. The audacity nearly made me laugh. I whispered to myself, on Chermisday, Marcus, you'll learn something too. When we stepped out into the rain, I felt droplets soak into my hair and clothes, but for the first time, the cold didn't bother me. I had purpose. I had proof.
3 days before Chermisday, tension clung to the air like electricity. The office buzzed with celebration preparations, floral arrangements arriving at reception, catering staff touring the event hall, marketing interns rehearsing the introduction script for Marcus's big moment. Everywhere I looked, people were polishing the pedestal they thought he deserved. Meanwhile, I finalized the digital presentation that would dismantle everything. Every slide, every audio clip, every email header. Organized, time-stamped, irrefutable. That evening, I scheduled a private meeting with Helena Brooks. When I stepped into her office, she looked up with her usual composed expression. "Emma," she said, "what can I do for you?" My throat tightened, but I laid the USB drive on her desk. "I need you to see something before the ceremony." She studied my face for a long moment before inserting the drive. As she watched the evidence unfold, her expression shifted from confusion to shock to controlled fury. When the final file played, the recording where Marcus said, "We'll bury Emma's involvement, nobody will look twice," she closed her eyes and exhaled sharply. "How long have you been collecting this?" she asked. 18 months, I replied. Silence hung between us, heavy and electric. Finally, Helena said, "I will not allow this company to elevate a fraud, but you need to be prepared. This will be public." I nodded. "That's what I want." She tapped her pen against the desk thoughtfully. "This will be quite a Chermisday." I couldn't help the faint smile that tugged at my lips. As I walked out of her office, I felt a strange lightness. Fear didn't grip me anymore. Doubt didn't haunt me. The path was set, and there was no turning back. The night before Chermisday, I couldn't sleep. My apartment felt too quiet, the ticking clock too loud. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, imagining every possible outcome. Chaos, denial, explosion, collapse. I wasn't nervous. I was steady, like a drawn bow waiting to release its arrow. Around midnight, Aaron knocked on my door. "I brought tea," he said, stepping inside. We sat on the couch, the warm mug between my palms grounding me. "Em," he murmured, "tomorrow, whatever happens, I'm proud of you." I swallowed hard. I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing it because someone needs to hold him accountable. He nodded. "And because he hurt you." A tremor ran through me. "Yes, he did." Aaron hesitated before asking,
Do you think he has any idea? I shook my head. Marcus doesn't believe consequences apply to him. The next morning, as the sun crawled across my floor, I dressed slowly, choosing a simple black outfit that made me feel calm and unshakable. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. Not the broken woman crying in her car, but someone sharper, steadier, carved by purpose. As I walked out the door, I whispered, "It's time." At the office, everything shimmered with celebration. Gold banners, bouquets, eager faces. Marcus laughed loudly near the podium, basking in admiration. He never glanced my way. If he had, he might have seen the quiet storm behind my eyes. I approached the stage, Helena already waiting, and felt my heartbeat slow into something cold and controlled. Chermisday had arrived, quiet, inevitable, and poised to rewrite everything. When the ceremony began, the lights dimmed and a soft orchestral track filled the hall. People settled into their seats, whispering excitedly about Marcus's visionary leadership. I stood off to the side with Helena, my heartbeat steady, my breathing slow. Marcus stepped onto the stage wearing the confident grin he had perfected over years of deception. "Thank you all for being here," he began, voice smooth and polished. "This promotion marks the beginning of a new era for our division." Applause erupted. He basked in it, spreading his arms slightly as though embracing his kingdom. When the noise settled, Helena stepped forward. "Before we proceed," she announced, "we have a special presentation." Marcus blinked, surprised. "Presentation?" he repeated under his breath, just loud enough for me to hear. Helena nodded toward me. "Emma, the floor is yours." A ripple of confusion swept through the audience. Marcus stared at me, eyebrows pinched. I walked to the podium, feeling the weight of 18 months of silence rising behind me like a tidal wave. "Good morning," I said calmly. "Today is important, not just for the company, but for truth." Marcus laughed lightly, trying to regain control. "Emma, this isn't the time." "Do you know what today is?" I said, cutting through his protest. The room quieted. "It's Chermisday." A hush fell over the hall. I clicked the remote, and the first slide illuminated the screen, an email thread with timestamps showing my original concept, metadata intact. Gasps echoed. Marcus stiffened. "This is taken out of context," he snapped. I continued unfazed, playing the audio clip where he said, "We'll bury Emma's involvement." Priya stood up in the audience. "That's true. He told me to delete her files." The room erupted. Marcus's face drained of color as truth began slicing through his carefully constructed image. As the evidence unfolded, the atmosphere shifted from disbelief to horror. Slide after slide revealed forged approvals, redirected payments, and vendor invoices tied to a shell company associated with Marcus's cousin. Riley stepped forward from the crowd, holding up a folder. "Independent forensic analysis confirms misappropriated funds." The murmurs grew louder, gasps, angry whispers, the sound of chairs shifting as people leaned forward. Marcus staggered back, grip tightening on the podium. "This is an ambush," he shouted, voice cracking. "She's lying. They're all lying." But Helena's voice cut through the noise with icy authority. "Sit down, Marcus." He froze, stunned. She addressed the room. "We have verified this evidence. We were given access days ago. An internal and external investigation has already begun." Marcus's mouth fell open. You knew?" She nodded. "We will not reward corruption." His panic rose like a tide. "Helena, please, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," she said. "You stole, manipulated, forged, and profited." The domino effect was instantaneous. Board members whispered fiercely among themselves. Investors began checking their phones as news alerts spread. Employees exchanged glances, some shocked, others muttering, "I knew something was off."
Marcus's supporters slowly inched away from him, distancing themselves like rats abandoning a sinking ship. Social media buzzed with leaked snippets of the presentation Sophia uploaded in real time. My phone vibrated continuously, but I ignored it. The truth was finally breathing, finally living in the open. Marcus turned to me with a look I'll never forget, rage battling fear. "You ruined me," he whispered. I met his eyes. "No, you ruined yourself. I just stopped letting you hide." He looked around the room again, realizing for the first time in his life that no amount of charm could save him. Chermisday had claimed its due.
Security was called when Marcus attempted to storm toward the projector, shouting, "Stop this! Shut it down!" 2 guards intercepted him, guiding him away from the equipment as he continued to flail. His voice cracked with desperation. "You can't do this! I built this department!" Helena responded sharply, "You built it on stolen work and fraud." The room went silent again as she approached the podium and announced, "Effective immediately, Marcus Hale is suspended pending further legal action." A wave of whispers rushed through the hall. Marcus sank into a chair, trembling, his face pale and drained of arrogance. Witnesses stepped forward, Priya recounting deleted files, another colleague describing conversations overheard, a vendor rep explaining the suspicious invoices. Each testimony struck him like another blow. I stood nearby, emotionless, feeling something inside me slowly uncoil, a release, a weight shedding itself. Marcus looked up at me, eyes hollow. "Why couldn't you just let it go?" he whispered. I answered softly, "Because my silence was the only thing protecting you." Tears filled his eyes. Not remorse, fear. For the first time, Marcus felt the consequences he always thought he was immune to. More calls came over the intercom as HR prepared documentation and legal counsel arrived. His career wasn't just damaged, it was collapsing. Some employees approached me quietly, offering words of support. One said, "We're sorry we didn't see it sooner." Another whispered, "You deserved better." Their voices were gentle, but they weren't what steadied me. What steadied me was looking at Marcus, stripped of his power, stripped of his lies, stripped of the identity he built entirely from things he stole, and realizing I felt no triumph, no cruelty, only closure. "Chermisday isn't revenge," I said quietly. "It's truth." The aftermath was swift and brutal for Marcus. Within 48 hours, the company released a public statement announcing his termination and full cooperation with financial investigators. His promotion was revoked, his access revoked, his reputation crumbled across every professional network. News outlets reported the scandal using phrases like fabricated success, ethical violations, and stolen intellectual property. Meanwhile, I returned to work with dignity I hadn't felt in years. People who once avoided me now stopped by my desk with warm smiles. Priya brought me coffee and whispered, "You're incredible." Aaron took me out to dinner and said, "You look lighter." But Marcus, he spiraled. He sent me long emails oscillating between apologies and accusations. "You destroyed my life," one said. Another read, "Maybe I deserved some consequences, but not this." I didn't respond. Boundaries were part of healing. One afternoon, I received a call from Helena. "Emma," she said, "how would you feel about leading the new innovation team?" My breath caught. "Me?" She chuckled. "The work was always yours." I accepted, but not out of spite, out of growth. 6 months later, my team thrived. I rebuilt my confidence piece by piece, discovering joy in creation again. As for Marcus, rumors said he struggled to find work, faced mounting legal fees, and withdrew from everyone who once admired him. Sometimes I wondered if he ever understood that he wasn't punished for ambition, but for the cruelty he wielded to feed it. One morning, as I stood near the office window watching sunlight spill across the city, I whispered, "Chermisday taught me something important.
Silence is not weakness. And for the first time since everything began, I felt free. In the months that followed, Chermisday became a quiet landmark in my life, a reminder not of vengeance but of transformation. Aaron often joked that I should write a book about resilience. Sophia insisted on celebrating the anniversary of the victory with cupcakes labeled Truth Wins. But for me, the real triumph wasn't Marcus's downfall. It was the reclaiming of my voice. I walked through each day with steadier steps, clearer boundaries, and an inner calm forged from fire. Sometimes, while leading team meetings, I'd glance at the empty seat that once belonged to Marcus and think about how differently things could have turned out if he had chosen integrity instead of greed. But I never felt bitterness, only distance, like remembering a place I once struggled to escape. One evening, as I left the office, I found a small envelope taped to my door at home. Inside was a brief handwritten note from Marcus. "I'm sorry. I know it's too late." I folded it once and placed it in a drawer, not as forgiveness, but as closure. Life has a way of balancing itself when truth is allowed to breathe. Today, I mentor young employees who remind me of who I once was, quiet, brilliant, doubting themselves. I tell them, protect your ideas, protect your voice, and never let anyone convince you that you're background material. Sometimes they ask, "How did you learn that lesson?" I smile and answer simply, "Chermisday," because it wasn't just a day circled on a calendar. It was the moment I stopped being a victim and became the author of my own story. And when I look at my life now, calm, successful, filled with purpose, I feel no regret, no lingering shadows, only gratitude. Chermisday taught me that sometimes karma needs a little help, and giving it that help changed everything.